turn that on too. Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, February 25th, 2024. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes, 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, observers who will participate in this meeting, regardless of whether they are physically here in the council chambers in Listowel or being connected through web technologies. At this time, we will begin the meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those who are viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. At this point, you can see that all councillors are in attendance in the chamber. So let us move to item 5 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol, at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared already in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. I've had correspondence from Councillor Andreessen. Did you wish to make your declaration?
Good evening, Mayor Kasenberg and fellow councillors and to staff and those attending this evening. I just want to declare pecuniary interest this evening on items 9.2.1 regarding the awarding of a tender of the Isachenko Municipal Drain and 9.2.2 regarding the award of tender for the Brant and Horton Municipal Drain. My husband and I own land through our farm corporation that's serviced by these drains. And finally, this will also impact my participation in the confirmatory bylaw, which is item 17.1. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Any other colleagues wishing to make a declaration this evening? All right, I'm not seeing any at this point. My role as chair prompts me to manage the flow of proceedings tonight and largely in accord with our agenda. We usually do have some participating remotely by web conference. Should they wish to speak, they may draw the attention of the clerk to this fact using the conferencing technology's text chat function. And certainly for those who are remote, if technical difficulties arise, I will advise and perhaps even send some help. Let us now focus on the people's business. Part of that focus is achieved when those in the chamber silence and put away their phones. Regarding item 6 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Anstedt, thank you, and Councillor Blazek will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, Councillor Andreessen is recording a manual vote in favor. And with that, that is carried. Thank you. Let's move next then to item 7 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item or items from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 13 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any corrections to minutes? I'm not seeing any indication of that, so let's consider a motion that consent items 7.1 to 7.13 be received for information and the minutes of the February 5th, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. And Councillor Richardson as our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And Councillor Andreessen again records a manual vote in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. At this time, it's proposed that we move to item 8 on our agenda. We have no delegations to council this evening. We also do not have any public meetings that are scheduled for our meeting this evening. So that means we can move fully forward into item 9, reports from key departments and staff. We have 3 items tonight from the Development and Protective Services Department. As item 9.1.1, Council is invited to forward a recommendation to approve with a collection of conditions to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate related to an application requesting consent to sever lands in the Wallace Ward of the Municipality of North Perth, owned by 1424149 Ontario Limited, care of Avtar Sandhu and represented by Jeff Boozman. County of Perth Planner Nathan Garland, who works on North Perth files, is with us to provide an overview and recommendation. Welcome, Planner Garland.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kasenberg, members of North Perth Council. It is my pleasure to introduce this consent application, B4723. I do have a short presentation outlined for you, as well as I do have some comments from the County of Wellington that were just provided later today, so I will let you know that as we go through the meeting. This is relates to consent application B4723. The owner is 1424149 Ontario Limited, Avtar Sandhu, and the applicant is Jeff Beesman, Van Harten Surveying, represented by Jeff Beesman and Haley Keast, who's joining us virtually and online tonight. The agent is the same. The location is noted as Concession 10, Part Lot 21, Reference Plan 44R3705, Parts 2 and 3, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth. And the municipal address is 112 King Street. It is known as the King's Hotel in Palmerston. Next slide, please. Oh, I can use this, right? Sorry. Just a severance sketch that they're proposing. This is a fairly unique property, just for council's information. This is shared between both the County of Perth and County of Wellington. As I understand, there's some history relating to that and reasons why, but we won't get into that tonight. But otherwise, they are asking to sever off a small portion of the back of the one part of the property. That will remain merged with what's called Parcel B. So you'll see Parcel A, which contains the hotel and motel portion as well as the restaurant. Parcel B is predominantly vacant right now, so there is nothing on the property. They are looking to propose to do a future development there. I believe a mix of commercial and residential as well too. This area at the back just provides some squaring off of the property and maintains it as such. There's just a report photo. So the yellow area is the yellow and reds are the lands in Perth County. You'll see that little bit of a gap. The areas to the north are the areas in Wellington County. So the yellow portion would be severed off. That would remain merged with the northern portion in the Wellington County area, as well as that red portion is existing now. That would also remain merged with a portion of the development in Wellington County as well, where the hotel is. So the County of Wellington has previously approved the severance application in their property. I believe it was B6023. The severed lot will remain merged with the abutting lands in Perth County. So there will be two parcels created with both Wellington and Perth as jointly, I guess, shared properties. There is a bell easement that exists on the property right now. So we have included conditions that that bell easement be registered on there. And there have been no comments or concerns expressed from the general public on this application. Other than the County of Wellington, which is now I'll go into, I apologize, I have not had a chance to add this slide, but I will go over cut the County of Wellington's comments verbally. So the County of Wellington has asked that a solicitor complete a firm undertaking to the satisfaction of the County of Perth, County of Wellington, that the proposed severed lands will merge with the adjacent lands in Wellington County. Proposed severed lands in application B6023, approximately 1.08 hectares. So a firm undertaking just means that the lawyer promises to undertake the work as it's happening. The solicitor complete a firm undertaking to the satisfaction of the County of Perth and County of Wellington that the purchaser owner take title of the severed lands in the same manner that they hold their abutting lands in the County of Wellington. This just means that they'll put them in the same name. They won't put it into different names, so that way it just remains merged as well too. They have asked for a third condition, that the subsequent to Section 53 of the Planning Act, RSL 1990, be applied to any subsequent conveyance or transaction involved in the parcel of land that is subject to this consent. This is a requirement of the County of Wellington. Perth County does not require that typically on their consent application or consent certificates, so that's primarily with the County of Wellington. They've asked for that. So just some site photos. You'll see this photo to the left of the vacant land. That's where the severance is proposed to occur. So there is at the very back there, that tree line at the back. The notice that was posted on the front of the property is letting folks know that that's happening. And that's a requirement of the Planning Act. Oh, and then I think, sorry, I flipped back. And then there's just the existing building structure as it is today, without the snow. And so it is my recommendation that the Municipality of North Perth supports the application B5323 submitted by Van Harten Surveying Inc., care of Jeff Beesman, on behalf of 142419 Ontario Limited, care of Avatar Sandhu, and that the Municipality of North Perth Council recommends approval of consent B5323 for lands described as Concession 10, Part Lot 21, Reference Plan 44R 3705, Parts 2 and 3, Wallace Ward, in the Municipality of North Perth, and forwards the conditions listed as amended in the staff report dated February 26, 2024 to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate. I'm happy to address or answer any questions at this time. And I can provide the clerks with the County of Wellington condition on that later.
Okay. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you very much for your talk. Good evening, council and public. Thanks very much for your reports. Nathan, just a question. If this application is approved by the Land Division Committee and so on, and when that development happens, or proposed development for housing happens in the Wellington portion, because this lot addition remains well on it, would they have to come back to us for that as well? Or that depends on the development?
That's my understanding. It depends on the development. We have seen a conceptual sketch. There are no buildings or structures proposed for that small portion. It would require to come back for a zoning amendment to just correct that deficiency if there was any kind of concerns, because right now it's not a feasible lot. It would not meet the setback requirements. So just right now it's just meant for passive use in that area.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else with questions or comments at this point? Okay, let's consider the resolution then as follows. That the Municipality of North Perth supports application B5323 submitted by Van Harten Surveying, Inc., care of Jeff Boosman, on behalf of 1424149 Ontario Limited, care of Avtar Santu, and that the Municipality of North Perth Council recommends approval of consent B5323 for lands described as Concession 10, Part Lot 21, RP 44R 3705, Parts 2 and 3, Wallace Ward, in the Municipality of North Perth, and forwards the conditions as amended listed in the staff report dated February 26, 2024, to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have.
I'm in favor, Mayor Casey.
Councillor Ansted's recording a manual vote in favor. And that is carried. Thank you on that one, Mr. Garland. Let's introduce the next one for you then as item 9.1.2. Another consent application, this one a touch more complicated given the number of parties involved. In this one, Council is invited to forward a recommendation to approve with a collection of conditions to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate related to an application requesting consent to sever lands in the village of Atwood in the Elma ward of the Municipality of North Perth with multiple parties involved. The outcome will be to create a new residential lot facing King Street, Atwood. County of Perth planner Nathan Garland remains in front of us and will tell us that story. Mr. Garland.
Thank you very much again, Mayor Kaisenberg, members of North Perth Council. So you have another presentation presented for consent file B49, 23, B50, 23, and B51, 23. The owners are John and Janice Chapman, Robert and Velma Howes, and Dale and Caroline Martin. The applicant or agent is R.L. Turvitt or Les Turvitt, and the location is lots 1 through 6, Plan 104 and 105, lots 1 through 6, lot 104 and 105, Plan 253, part of Henry Street, and the municipal address is known as 246, 250, and 252 Main Street in Atwood. So I'll just walk you through this a little bit. There are there are 3 consent applications as part of this. There will be one lot created, however, there is proposed to have 2 lots merge. So you'll see the red lot, that's the proposed severed lot, that's the one that's intended to be created. That does front onto King Street. The pinkish lot, or the pinkish lot and the yellow lot, those are intended to merge with the red lot, so that will create the new lot there. So that's the 3 severances that are required. The other lots are the retained lots, so those will all have existing dwellings on them. So I've just outlined the B51, B50, and B49 for your reference. All the lots meet the minimum lot size for a residential lot in the village of Atwood, so all of them comply with the zoning for that. There are MTO comments provided as part of this. I won't go through all of them. They are fairly standard comments. Part of the property, or actually the entire property, is located with the MTO control area. So MTO does have that highway frontage in Atwood and does control that. So they provide comments on most severance applications in that area. The conditions are listed in the severance application and as part of the recommendation. We have had some discussion with the owner, and so they have asked that condition number 4 be removed from the consent application. So that's the shed. County staff have asked that that shed be removed or that a building permit be applied for as it's an accessory to the residential use. However, the owner has asked that that shed remain and that that condition be removed from the consent. Just a couple of site photos. So this is the existing one looking from Main Street towards the retained lot. You'll see both the house there as well as the public meeting notice sign that has been posted along the roadway there. And just a couple photos of the existing shed on the property. So that's just looking at it from the King Street side, looking towards that existing shed that's there. It's a fairly substantial lot there. It's been existing and created for the structure that's there as well too. So there's not anything proposed in the structure. It's just proposed to remain like is as is my understanding. Planning comments, so there is water and sewer available within the village. My understanding from Public Works is there is a requirement for some water line to be run out towards there. However, there is sewage hookup available at the lot that is there now. They are accessible to the open road frontages along that stretch of King Street. And then there is some gentle intensification encouraged as part of this. So this does make a fairly passive or residential lot to be created. And then just some explanation around the condition 4. So because it's an accessory structure without a main use, that's why we've asked for it to be removed. However, the applicant has asked for that condition to be removed. So, and then therefore, it is my recommendation that the municipality of North Perth supports application files B49, B50, 23, and B51, 23 submitted by R.L. Turvitt on behalf of John and Janice Chapman, Robert and Velma Howes, and Dale and Caroline Martin. And the municipality of North Perth Council recommends approval of consent B49, 23, B50, 23, and B51, 23 for the lands described as Lot 1 through 6, Lot 104 and 105, Plan 253, part of Henry Street in Atwood in the municipality of North Perth, and forwards the conditions listed in the staff report dated February 26, 2024 to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate. And then I understand the owner and applicant are available tonight as well too.
All right, thanks, Mr. Garland. Questions or first comments? Can you just walk us through that shed? I think that's the piece of the puzzle here that we would probably benefit from knowing more about.
Yep. So the shed, the condition that we've listed right now is that the owner applies for a residential building permit. A shed is permitted on a residential lot provided there's a main use that takes place. That's typically a house. Typically, you're not allowed to have, say, a residential lot with an accessory structure on the property. This shed is existing. It's in place. It's not proposed. There's no modifications or changes. As part of this consent application, that puts that shed somewhat in a non-compliance status. So this condition's listed to creating some compliance. However, it is a North Perth condition as well too. So it is up to some discretion from the North Perth to consider that as well. So we've asked for it to either apply for a building permit or come out. The owner's asked for the shed to remain in that condition to be removed.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. So there's a proposition here that we have to consider because the planning advice remains. I assume that
The planning advice remains. It doesn't change. But
okay, thank you. Anyone with other comments or questions at this point? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. My understanding is that the shed is the owners wish for it to be continue to be used as part of their plans for a new house on the site. They have no plans for a house as yet. It just will take them time to draw those plans and get things in place and so on. And I think the proposal for a date of when that's in the planning department's comments leaves them very, very tight. And whether this council is willing to extend that, like keep the condition, but change it to allow for a 3 to 5 year window as opposed to a short time frame, or if it's totally removed. I think we need to show some flexibility here. The other issue, as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Garland, is that the municipal water, although will be available at some point, it's not available currently. Is that correct?
that's my understanding. It's not currently available.
Yeah. So even if the applicants wish to be able to build a house and we're prepared to start building forthwith after the consent, if it's approved, they would have to have water service, either extend water from a surrounding property or drill their own well, which seems to be counterproductive when the municipality fully intends to service this by municipal water in the next relatively short period of time. So again, my trying to be clear from the applicants, for the applicant is that I think it's important that either A, we remove the proposed condition, or B, modify it so that it's a 3 to 5 year time frame that will in fact ensure the municipality that we don't have a new lot created with a shed on it as opposed to a dwelling and a shed. I think in discussing with the applicant, they fully intend to build a house at some point. It's just a matter of not knowing the exact time frame, and the proposed condition is not conducive to allow them flexibility to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, through your mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Rothwell. I'd be fine with a 5 year time frame on that clause.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I ask the CAO for an impression here in terms of this non-compliance? Is this like highly unusual? Does this create any problems for us in the context of various legislation or anything?
I guess my comment would be we have several properties in the municipality that are maybe not compliant for a number of reasons, predate zoning, other circumstances of severances that happened that maybe didn't catch some of the stuff, but there are other properties. And most of them are typically legal non-complying because they predate the zoning bylaw. So it wouldn't be unusual, but I certainly concur that council probably should leave the condition in with an extension on the condition, if that's the choice.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, it wasn't that many years ago that we allowed another resident to build the accessory structure on their lot first, previous to building the house, knowing that they were going to build a house, and that was on line 87. So I'm fully in support of giving the 5 years on this condition.
Councillor Nordham?
Thanks, through your Mayor Kiesenberg. Is 5 years enough time for the applicant?
It depends on when you're going to extend water, so I don't have to drill a well.
If I may, through your worship and to council, if council's direction is to amend or remove the condition, I might encourage the removal, as 5 years puts it in a weird position. Typically, consents and severances are okay they're approved for 2 years, at which time they lapse or expire. There is sometimes the opportunity for review for 1, so 5 years puts it in a bit of an odd quagmire. I don't know if it's wrong, but it just puts it in a bit of an odder position. So if council was moving towards that, I might encourage the actual just removal of the condition, but I can't go against my report either. So,
All right, let me direct. I see CAO Snell's picked up his microphone, so it sounds like he wants to make another comment.
I certainly agree with or understand what Councillor Garland is saying. The other option is we could do a letter of undertaking with the applicant that would be outside of the severance conditions. So the condition would be just that the municipality and the owner agree to a letter of undertaking to remove the dwelling within a proposed timeline by that council agrees to. That's the other option.
It sounds like if anything happens here, the approach would be contingent upon when the water service comes, based on what the owner has said. And from that point, maybe that's where the clock ticks a little faster.
The letter of undertaking could say something like that as well.
Is that fine?
the undertaking actually resolves that quite nicely, I think, and then subject to wording that either water extension after the certain water has been provided. I mean, my recommendation still stands, but that actually works out quite well.
Okay. We got there. Councillor Johnston, you wanted to weigh in? There we go.
I actually really like what Chris says, because it could be 3 or 4 years till we get water there, and we don't really want another hole in the aquifer. If we're doing water in Atwood, let's get everybody on the water. So I think the letter of understanding, I think, is a great idea. So I would be in favor of removing condition 4 and doing the letter of understanding.
Okay. Colleagues are nodding their heads generally, so it looks like it's standing. All right, any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, I have to think on the fly here how we're going to modify this, but well, let's see what I can do. All right, we have a resolution that we will modify a little bit that is as follows. That the municipality of North Perth supports application files B49-23, B50-23, and B51-23 submitted by R.L. Turvitt on behalf of John and Janice Chapman, Robert and Velma Howes, and Dale and Caroline Martin. And that the municipality of North Perth recommends approval of consent B49-23, B50-23, and B51-23 for lands described as Lot 1 through 6, 104 and 105, Plat 253, Part Henry Street, Atwood, in the municipality of North Perth, and forwards. How many conditions were there? We were striking one.
One moment.
Maybe the clerk can help us. Can you give us that out of the document? So what's the last condition numbered? Is there a
May
number?
switch to amend condition 4. That would be my.
Forwards the conditions listed excluding. Well, let's try excluding. What was that clause?
You're going to exclude condition 4.
Okay, excluding condition 4 with provision for the.
You would just amend it, but we can do an amended condition, I think.
For the undertaking of a letter of, okay, so let's not use undertaking twice, because that sounds awfully morbid, doesn't it? With provision for agreement on a letter of undertaking, thank you, pertaining to services provision and structural dwelling. This sounds good. And construction of dwelling, construction of it's a primary residence, right? Like we're looking for the primary dwelling. On which lot? What's the lot number that the primary dwelling is coming onto?
I would just say the lot fronting King Street. Severed lots.
Okay, yeah. On the severed lot. Thank you. That's helpful. All right. Hey, this is legislation on the fly. This is how it works, right? Okay, so let's try that again. I'm going to read and that. Is that okay? This will help the clerk team. I'm sure they're appreciative. And that the Municipality of North Perth Council recommends approval of consent B49-23, B50-23, and B51-23 for lands described as Lot 1 through 6, 104 and 105, Plan 253, Part Henry Street, Atwood, in the Municipality of North Perth, and forwards the conditions listed in the staff report, excluding condition 4, with provision for agreement on a letter of undertaking pertaining to services provision and construction of a primary dwelling on the severed lot to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate. Something like that. There was a date in there that I think I missed, but you'll figure it out, right? Okay. What do you think? Are we good? All right. So it looks like it's moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any further discussion or debate? All right. Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Garland and the colleagues. Thanks for the collaboration on that one. Now we have one more. 9.1.3, Council is invited to consider the redevelopment of a lot on Main Street East Listowel, which would require both an amendment to the Listowel Ward official plan and a revision to the current zoning as a zoning bylaw amendment. In this one, Council is invited to forward an approved official plan amendment to the county for approval, and to proceed with first and second reading of the zoning bylaw amendment, which would await third reading until the county has its say, as I understand things, on the official plan amendment. Mr. Garland is still with us. Mr. Garland is going to tell us yet another story about land development. Compelling, exciting.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kaysenberg. This is my last one for the evening. I'm here to present on application OPA 33, so this is the listable official plan amendment 33, and the North Perth zoning bylaw amendment 02-2021. The owners are HAE Listable Incorporated, and the applicant and agent is Evan Argeloff. My apologies, that should be updated as part of that. The location is Plan 194, Part Lot J, reference plan 44R 4545, Part 1, listable ward in the municipality of North Perth. And then there's just an outline of the property of the subject. So just an aerial photo as well as a reference plan on the subject property. So the subject property is outlined in green on the left-hand side. You'll see the listable high school, listable Chrysler, KFC surrounding the property. Just across the street is the Salvation Army Church. And then towards the rear is the Lafarge building as well too, several properties away. The report plan is located on the right-hand side, just outlining the subject property that the applications pertain to as well. For council's information, we have had some discussions with the applicants. So this is an updated site plan that has been provided as part of our previous presentation. So we previously brought this to North Perth Council as well as a public meeting back in January of 2024. We have had some discussions and dialogue with the applicant, specifically regarding the front yard as well as some lot coverage area, the landscape open space as well too, so that you will know that this is a little bit different than the original application that was presented. I'll go through some of the changes, but just for consistency's sake, it's still a 3 to 4 story mixed use commercial residential structure. So commercial would be at the front, approximately 4 units proposed, and the residential would be on the main floor rear, 4 units currently proposed, as well as a second floor and third floor residential with a potential for fourth floor. We have looked at capping it as 20 residential units because that does conform with what's been applied for the parking plan, etc. So we are still looking to keep it within that 20 residential units. And then the 4 commercial units, there is that's up for an option. We haven't capped that in either the zoning or the official plan. So this does get a little bit wordy, so I'll try my best to go through it. So this does outline the changes to the OPA and the zoning in blue on the map. The OPA, as I've mentioned, and the zoning bylaw, we've capped at 20 residential units in there. The ZBA requests a special zone to allow residential. So this is some of the relief requested, and I'll outline the changes. Currently, the front yard setback, or the minimum front yard setback, is asked to be reduced to 5.5 meters, where previously the original application was 2.13 meters. So they have moved it back an additional roughly 2.3 meters from what the original ask is. That is in line with more or less the KFC on that property, on the neighboring property, as well as the residential on the west end side. They are requesting a interior side yard setback to 6.61 from the 7.5. That's consistent with the original ask and the original request. And then also the landscape area has changed. It has gone up now to 17.61. The requirement in the zoning bylaw is for 20%, so this is a lot closer to that 20%. So it's just looking at about 2.39% reduction from the original 20% requirement. And it is looking at 20 residential units. We are looking to cap that as well too, just to conform with the parking plan that what's been submitted. These are just some of the photos from the street that we've presented previously. So looking towards the property, those are temporary structures that have been placed there just for the sheds. Those would come away and then be removed if a new building goes into that location. There was a noise study completed by SoftDB dated June 2023, as well as a site plan has been provided and a stormwater management brief and a functional servicing report. Those would be required at the site plan stage to be updated as well too. However, the sound study does look at the adjacent Lafarge operation as some of the surrounding commercial and industrial uses and looks at mitigating that. Public comments have been provided by Lafarge. They were supportive of the application. They did ask for some warning clauses. Those would be addressed through the site plan stage. So there's a little bit of discussion there we probably would have with the applicant and the neighboring property owner just to make sure we're all on the same page with that and aware of it. Staff have provided comments on the parking, municipal services, traffic, and setbacks. Those were fine, but do need to be updated as part of a formal site plan application with respect to connections and servicing. And then BM Ross has also provided comments that are looking for a final and updated stormwater management report. Those would be addressed through the site plan application stage as well too. Public Works was satisfied with the road access and then the need for a servicing connection in more detail. And then just as a reminder, Bill 23 did remove the consideration for site plan control, so building design, etc. That's no longer a part of it, but it is required to still meet the stormwater requirements and servicing requirements for the municipality. Parking does not propose to be reduced, so they can accommodate all the required parking on site. That was one of the neighboring comments as well too, so that has been provided. And we have reached out to the neighbor just to let them know. We haven't heard a response, but we did let them know that that does comply. Warning clauses will be required as a recommended part of the site plan, so that recommends AC options as well as a note for any kind of purchase and sale agreement that those are required to be addressed, or those would be making folks aware of that. And then the development would still require site plan approval. I should note too, the official plan on zoning limited 20% or to 20 residential units. The landscape overlay is now closer to 20%. The front yard setback has been increased now a little bit further than the original ask, parking accommodating in site. This is looking at a little bit of a density increase for the listable area, specifically in that. So we're looking at about increasing those per hectare unit counts. Staff have requested as, again, first and second reading because, right, it would have to go to the County of Perth and then it comes back for third reading and final adoption for through the municipality of North Perth. And also we've asked for a holding zone to go on the property as well too. So this would still require to come back to lift the holding zone because there is a record of site condition requirement as part of this. And so I will go through my recommendation. I can see on my screen. My recommendation is that North Perth Council receive the report titled Listable Ward Official Plan Amendment Number 33 and North Perth Zoning and Bylaw Amendment 2-2021, affecting lands described as Plan 194, Part Lot J, Reference Plan 44R4545, Part 1, Listable Ward, Municipality of North Perth. And that North Perth Council adopt bylaw, Listable Ward Official Plan Amendment Number 33, and that North Perth Council provide first and second reading for ZBA 2-2021, affecting lands described as Plan 194, Part Lot J, Reference Plan 44R4545, Part 1, Listable Ward, Municipality of North Perth, municipally known as 670 Main Street E. And that North Perth Council forward the Listable Ward Official Plan Amendment Number 33 to Perth County for approval. I'm happy to address or answer any questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Garland. Questions or first comments? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. Nathan, the reason we're capping it at 20 residential units is due to parking? Is that what I understand?
That's what we were limiting at parking. Parking in the site plan's also shown that, so we don't want to get too far off that, but parking was the main consideration for that.
Anyone else? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And thank you, Nathan, for your report. The applicant's been at this for a while with staff and this council since 2021, I believe. And I want to thank the applicant's agent for working with staff to address the issues that have been in concern, both with respect to the needed studies as well as the proposed amendments that we've seen in terms of rearranging the location of the building to be sympathetic to the building both to the east and west, the KFC and the residential unit. I think what we've seen here in this mixed-use building is what probably we're going to see much more of within North Perth and Listowel Ward in particular. We've talked about building up, not out, and this is exactly what this proposal is, and I'm certainly in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else? Can you comment on affordability and whether there's any affordable component intended in this build?
Thank you, through your worship. Affordability, I guess we have had some discussion on the affordable aspect of it. Typically, we do encourage apartment or residential intensification as an affordable option for folks out there who are looking at a multi-option. There is no requirement for them to commit to an individual provider or that. That's I mean, we've looked at it, but I don't know how the enforceability aspect of that comes in. However, this does provide an increased variety of residential accommodation for folks out there, and typically the apartment type style is a little more affordable than a single detached.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or comments? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration then as follows, that North Perth Council receives the report entitled Listowel Ward Official Plan Amendment Number 33 and North Perth Zoning Bylaw Amendment 2-2021 affecting lands described as Plan 194 Part Lot J, RP 44R4545 Part 1, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth. and that North Perth Council adopts bylaw list award official plan amendment number 33, and that North Perth Council provides first and second reading for ZBA 2-2021 affecting lands described as Plan 194, Part Lot J, RP 44R 4545, Part 1, List Award, Municipality of North Perth, municipally known as 670 Main Street East, and that North Perth Council forwards the List Award Official Plan Amendment Number 33 to Perth County for approval. Can I call for a mover? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Richardson. Discussion or debate? Colleagues, I'm going to tell you why I'm voting against this. I've made this point before, but I will share it again. I believe that if we don't get a start on demanding affordability in these projects, we will never get there, and we know that there's a significant burden. I find myself increasingly thinking about the fact that as we allow current lands to be unregulated against the affordable conditions which are embedded in the List Award official plan, that in fact we're harming future developers who will have more of a burden to try to produce the affordable housing units that are required based on the recent Watson study. So for me, this was a prime opportunity with 20 apartments to have 4 of them that were affordable, and I'm not seeing it, so I will continue to object to this, these kinds of proposals. I know that that's not a universally loved position, but I did want you to understand why I will vote no. Anyone else? It's not appropriate for someone from the public to speak at this point. Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for the vote. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. All right, we turn now to item 9.2. Thank you, Mr. Garland, for all of the reports tonight. Item 9.2, reports from the Operations Department. The clerk should take note that Councillor Andreessen has left the chamber. As item 9.2.1 on our agenda, we have a procurement matter related to the Izachenko Municipal Drain Remediation. This procurement proposes award of a contract to Robinson Farm Drainage of Elsa Craig, Ontario. And looks like Mr. Couch, our Manager of Operations, is going to speak to this one tonight. Mr. Couch, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. In the absence of the drainage superintendent, I'm bringing forward a report on the Izachenko drain. This just went through Court of Revision with no comment earlier tonight. The drain itself cost and recommendation is for $268,000, $300. What was the engineer's recommendation? Both the drains tonight are below budget and straightforward projects that have a contractor that wants to get working as soon as possible. They might have to work around the half-load season. However, we'll probably see these in the ground fairly quickly. So in front of you is the recommendation to move forward with that price.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Couch. Questions or first comments on this drain? Anyone? All right, I have a resolution as follows that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards tender NP-001-24T Izachenko Municipal Drain as per the recommendation from Spreet Associates to Robinson Farm Drainage, Elsa Craig, Ontario, in the amount of $232,500 excluding HST, and that Robinson Farm Drainage be advised the construction shall not start until Council has given third reading of the bylaw. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Norton, thank you. And Councillor Duncan, is there a seconder? Any discussion or debate? Questions? Let me get your microphone. Hold on.
Just comment, Mr. Mayor, just for the rest of council. So our Court of Revision met this evening at 6 and 6:15 on both these matters that we're dealing with, and there were no appeals. So just so council's aware of that, things are going in pretty lockstep here. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Rothwell, for that report. All right. Any further? Councillor Johnston, let me find the microphone. There you go.
This might be for the clerk. When will we be doing third reading? Fairly soon, or do we have to wait on the appeal period?
Okay. Clerk.
So we do have to wait for the appeal period to be over before we bring it back for third reading.
Okay, thank you. Good process reminder. Councillor Rothwell.
Just further to Councillor Johnson, I think the issue of concern is that there are apparatus on site here that have been placed presumably by the Robinson Farm Drainage. The concern I think that some of us may have is that the project's going to go forward with works that were presumably put on by the contractor at their own on their own initiative, as opposed to the letting of this contract. So I'm just putting it out there so council's aware. I mean, certainly on the south side, on the next item, is much more visible because if you're traveling on Perth line 86, you'll see the culverts and so on that are there. It's an unusual situation, according to Councillor Johnson, that we see drainage works going on like this in February, but this is a very unusual time in terms of weather and opportunity that's before us. So council's aware, I don't think it's fair that if you haven't been out that way, that you would not necessarily have noticed the materials that are already on the site. So not to say that they're installed, they're just on site. So.
Thank you. Mr. Gouch, any?
Yeah, we spoke to the engineers regarding that issue and the appeal period, and they're aware the contractor was hoping to be mobilized and ready to go as soon as the appeal period was over. Again, there may be a conflict with half load season, especially where the location of their supply pits are. So they're working through all of that, but anxious to do the work. We are aware, and I'll remind the engineers again to confirm that with them about waiting on the appeal period. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Blasek.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We all keep saying appeal period, but nobody has an actual timeline. For those of us who don't know, what is the appeal period?
So they have 21 days to appeal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? It's duly moved and seconded. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Item 9.2.2 is pretty similar, even the same area, I think. You offered a few comments already that sort of hinted at it. Is there anything more you want to add to this one for the sort of Brant and Horton municipal drains?
Councillor Rothwell mentioned about the Court of Revision, no comments. Other than that, we're below budget, and the recommendation is in front of you to award with the same caveat about the appeal period going through the engineers to the contractor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or first comments on this one? All right, I have a resolution then that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards tender NP-002-24T Brant and Horton municipal drains as per the recommendation from Dietrich Engineering Limited to Robinson Farm Drainage, Elsa Craig, Ontario, in the amount of $436,628 excluding HST, and that Robinson Farm Drainage be advised that construction shall not start until Council has given third reading of the bylaw. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Councillor Nordholm will be our seconder on that one. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're missing one. And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Anstey, if you would invite Councillor Andreessen to return to the chamber, that would be appreciated. All right, next up is in item 9.2.3, staff is inviting council to consider its recommendations to Perth County relating to roads rationalization in our area. The county has a policy and procedure pertaining to the possible change of responsibility for municipal roads, and this is a step in the process allowing North Perth to send to the county some segments of road that, based on various data, may warrant an upload to the county for their ongoing responsibility. That's kind of exciting stuff. I'm not sure that this has happened yet on my watch as mayor. So here we are, something new. Mr. Couch is with us to share, and we look forward to hearing more about this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Christenberg. This is very much in keeping with the master plan concepts of classifying roads appropriately for their use and function, especially over the build-out window of the next 20 years in terms of traffic growth. So the county has approached us by letter through the clerk that they would like to see a listing of roads that either could be uploaded or requested for downloading. The list in front of you is mainly an upload list based on the classification of roads that we have today, the traffic volumes that are on them, and their potential uses in the future as potential arterial roads under the Transportation Master Plan and truck bypass roads. So the list is going to be read to you. But I did want to point out that a lot of these roads, like 84 and 87, and I was having a conversation with Councillor Duncan about this earlier, are going to be upgraded regardless of whether they become a bypass in that 5, 10, 15, 20-year window because they're deteriorated. So they will be either slightly widened or very much widened as a bypass road. The other factor that's important to remember is the potential of a roundabout or signalization at 84 and at 87 under the control of the MTO. So we've started conversations with them about the northern one at 87 and their timing windows for that as well. So when those proper corners get put in, intersections that are capable for truck turning radiuses, those roads will get very busy. It's very timely, and we had good meetings with the county about this to move forward, start studying these roads and set up a process is what they're going to do, and evaluation for approval of these roads to either be uploaded or not. These ones simply are for their consideration. The listing is for their consideration to go through that process. They may or may not be studied or accepted, but we feel that it's a good list, and there has been some good review with staff at the county level as well on the ones that are here. They include Line 87 from 165 to 140, Road 165 itself from 86 up to 88, Line 84 from 164, which is Highway 23, to Perth County Road 147, a bypass potential road, Line 88 from 164 to 140. It's got the lowest traffic, but it would be the continuation of an already existing county line out to Wellington County 9. And then finally, Road 158, which is a busy road with high traffic numbers. There's a listing of traffic numbers there for you as well, from Line 84 down to Perth County Line 72. So that's the listing as it sits today. My understanding from their staff is that they're going to be evaluating what types of processes and whether to engage a consultant and who, and then going into a rationalization project that will definitely take the remainder of this year and may go into the following year as they look at the kind of detail that's involved in it. But this is our method of addressing it with them and coordinating it with them. So the recommendation in front of you is simply to bring those roads in this report forward to them for consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Couch. Colleagues, questions, first comments? Councillor Rothwell, let me just get your microphone.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Lyndon, for the report. I'm just wondering, for council's benefit, I believe one of the reference material to be attached was the county rationalization notification and plan. I never got a copy of that. Perhaps others received it, but I never received a copy.
No one would have received that.
Okay.
It was not given to the clerk by staff, so that can be done. I can send it off to
and if I could also ask, I think for everyone's benefit, when you do send that out for us, if you could actually include a map for everyone's benefit so that we can actually see the proposed road allowances. Not everyone has the benefit of actually being around when we named all these roads and lines, but I was, so I mean I can do it in my head, but I think for everyone else's benefit and the public, if you could have a map, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Will do.
Anyone else with questions or first comments at this point? Councillor Johnston.
Lyndon, a question about a road that's not on here. 140 from line 86 all the way to whatever the Moncton Road is. I just didn't know that one, to me, it kind of makes sense. You know, and I don't want them to download the road, but if we flip-flopped it in 147, it would make a lot more sense as a thoroughfare. I just didn't know had you considered it? I don't know what the numbers are on that road. It's not that likely well-traveled now, but if it was, you know, a county road, I'm sure it would be greatly used. So I just raised the question.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that was on the list, the 140, 147 up download. And in talking with my counterparts there, it's already there. It wasn't mentioned on this list specifically because it didn't relate to roads we already had good data on, but we did discuss it in detail. I can add that and even say that it was confirmed as a discussion point, but we discussed both those, and that has come up in the past actually as we've been redeveloping Road 140, but also talking to the county about the winter maintenance on line 147 or Road 147 as well. So I will confirm that it's already there, and I'll send an email that just mentions that they were given honorable mention at the meeting.
Thank you.
Isn't, and I could be wrong, maybe I don't drive enough, I don't know. Isn't 140 a gravel road at this point? So to upload it to the county, would the county have any concerns about receiving a gravel road?
They didn't. This is, again, looking out on a longer forecast of what could be done in terms of a transition over. Over the last 6 years, Perth East and North Perth have worked at widening the platform on that road and rebuilding it under basically $500,000 each year. And, you know, in the background is that it's going to be pavable someday because of the base work that we've already done on it. And that would not be a concern. We discussed that as well. It would just be a matter of who would pave when, but it'll be on their forecast.
Is it evil for me to smile like a Cheshire cat and say, cool, they can pave it?
Yeah, certainly.
Right.
I think that'll come up through
Let me go over to Councillor Andreessen first, because she hasn't commented yet. Go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Thank you so much, Mr. Couch, for all your efforts with this. I think this is a great idea, and I've been advocating to have this review, so that's awesome. I'm also just wondering about the extension of line 84 from Highway 23. So this is going the opposite direction to what a possible truck route could be, and whether traffic is perhaps going straight through instead of turning into the town of Listowel. This goes past a feed mill, and a tractor parts and a wood manufacturing company. Does council understand which one I'm saying? Just wondering if council thought that might be, should be considered. I'm not sure. It is a paved road.
Let me direct to Mr. Couch first. Any comments on the road that she's talking about?
I have the advantage of knowing the details in the transportation master plan, and certainly that is a secondary option for the truck bypass in its first block and then heading north. So it could be studied there. We have some good numbers on that road. They're lower now just because it isn't traveled as much except to the feed mill. It was not entered in this. That leg of the bypass is in the future. It could be added if council wishes to tonight. It would just be the one block. And because it dead ends, it's difficult. You don't see county roads or larger, upper tier and MTO roads that would do that. They would probably continue right through, as you've mentioned as well. And that was beyond the foresight of the master plan, really. So that's why it's not there. But something like that could be introduced. I could mention it as well.
It sounds like it needs a little more thinking, perhaps, before we act on that one. You're wanting us to approve this for the sake of giving the county this list, saying, here you go, this is what we want to talk about, right?
Yes, and just being thoughtful about what should be included in it, and if we've hit all the roads that we need to.
Okay, thanks. We had some others over here who wanted a second crack at this. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Just further to Councillor Johnson's point and Mr. Couch's point about Perth Road 147 and Road 140, what I've expressed before, and I'll say it again, I am concerned about the municipality of North Perth taking on any responsibility for what's currently a county road. In terms of maintenance requirements, they're higher. And as I understand, we don't have the same hours of contribution for those roads. So frankly, I'm not confident that we as the municipality should be taking on something which is already a county road. And I'm not speaking against Road 140, perhaps being considered for additional road works. And knowing the county as I do, many of these county roads, when they were first started, were gravel roads. So this is not new in terms of the realization, in terms of the additional requirements for a county road is to move traffic. I am concerned about Road 140 and it's meeting up with Perth Line 72 or the road to Moncton. Moncton goes to Perth Line 55, but anyways, but Perth Line 72 is the main concern I think I have in terms of the geometry where the road currently curves to the south as you go from Elma Ward into the Mornington Ward of Perth East. It's very much an issue of concern. I'm sure the engineers can deal with the geometry and so on, but just know that I've traveled that road many a time and there's been plenty of accidents there already. And to have large transports and other things go through that intersection without significant improvements, I think we're just asking for trouble. Nevertheless, if it's only for the sake of looking at it, I'm fine with that. But just know that I am concerned based on the geometry of Perth Line 72 in particular, less so about Perth Line 55 further to the south. But as Mr. Couch has pointed out, the significant works have been done between North Perth and Perth East in terms of the base. So just like anything, if you have a good base, you can build on it from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else? Councillor Johnston?
Just a really quick comment that I have no issue recommending a gravel road because most of our gravel roads will be smoother than 147, especially through the spring of the year. Even though it's paved, it is a terrible road in the spring.
Okay. Somewhat amused and noted. Anyone else with questions or comments at this stage? Do we want to make any revision to the list then? Anyone proposing a specific revision to the list? CAO Snell, did you want to jump in here?
I think we should just add 140. Whether that's from line 86 to Perth Line 55 or Perth Line 72, I don't know which makes the most sense, but I think we should just, kind of council should formally add it just so it's there.
Okay. Shall we be modest and ask it to go to 72 at this point? Is there any reason to go well beyond that?
I think from a longevity standpoint, it makes more sense to get it down to 55. I think that's when we'll see people use it.
Yeah,
but
okay. Okay, so from line 86, sorry, road 86 to Perth line 55, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Anything we want revised beyond that? Is council generally agreeable by a nod of heads to CEO Snell's suggestion? Okay. All right, then I have a resolution that we'll consider here, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth provides the road sections, we need a colon in there, line 87 from Road 165 to Road 140, Road 165 from Perth Line 86 to Line 88, Line 84 from Road 164, Highway 23 to Perth County Road 147, Line 88 from Road 164, Highway 23 to Road 140, Road 158 from Line 84 to Perth County Line 72, and Road 140 from Line 86 to Perth Line 55. To the County of Perth, sorry, let me finish the resolution here, for consideration in their road network rationalization review. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Nordum, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Thank you. Discussion or debate further? All right, not seeing anything on that score, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right, Mr. Couch, still with us, and this time you are back to respond to an inquiry from Councillor Rothwell, I believe, about the potential opportunities for delegations about roads and transportation issues to ministers of the Crown at the upcoming Ontario Good Roads Association meeting. I assume this is a verbal report. Mr. Couch, what do you have for us?
It is. Probably the only delegation or information that we'd like to hear from a ministry, and this is an open-ended question, would be the Ministry of Transportation, and it would be related to the southern sections of Highway 23 through the Atwood corridor from Newry to Listowel. We've met with them in the past to try and get projects moving in that area, and I've mentioned even at the capital budget project that we need to re-engage, and we have re-engaged, and there's been some good discussion. It's been more through the Listowel corridor around development that's happening on Line 87 or near it with the subdivision and our industrial subdivision. So we're talking to their planning staff and their traffic group. We have another meeting planned on the 4th of March, and we're going to ask specifically some questions and some planning ideas on what the status of the southern lengths of the road are. We have been told, and this is from staff at the ministry, which has happened before, that the date of the 87 intersection improvements at Highway 23 would be in 2027. Previously, they've said that works south of that would happen prior. So we're trying to confirm that, and I can get back to council and update you on that at that point. As I said, the meeting is on the 4th. Right now, we're not thinking a delegation is something that would be necessary. We have also put in the capital program that we want to have our final design in front of the ministry for the Atwood water main project down the main street this year, and have that approved and in a ready to go state. And so if it's ready to go, then at any point we could implement a project with them. But again, timing is something that we're hoping to get from the planning division and the traffic division in the next couple weeks for the whole section. The northern corridor was pushed forward mainly because of all of the development that's happening at that intersection or near it right now.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Just quick questions then. Your current understanding of the timeline on the Atwood Norrie corridor from the MTO's perspective. I know that we've provided them with cross sections and all that kind of stuff. What are we hearing from MTO at this point with regards to that project?
We'll know more after the 4th. Right now, I'm not going to give a date.
We're waiting, okay. And then with regards to 87, the traffic circle project, as I recall, initially they had been talking about 2025 as a potential date for that. They've now signaled that it's 2027, is that correct?
That's what the planning staff have said in terms of upgrades. We need that information for them because they're making comments on our roads for our subdivision developments on 23 and the distances those roads need to be.
Right. And
in order for them to make the comment, they need to know what they're going to be putting in. So it's spurred them ahead to getting more information to us now.
Okay.
It's a good thing.
Okay. We don't feel that there's a strong political need to have a delegation then at this point about any of these matters for the sake of getting things moving forward. CAO Snow, you picked up the microphone, I see.
At this point, we feel that we're moving in the right direction with staff. Hopefully it continues. We've had, as Manager Operations Couch said, we have met with the minister on this once before. We feel that the staff at the local office are working with us in the appropriate direction. So at this time, we don't feel we need the meeting, but I would say if we don't see some response out of our next few meetings with them this couple quarters, we probably should make a delegation to AMO.
Okay. Okay, that's a sensible approach. Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you to you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I'm really disappointed we're going from 2025 to 2027 now for that intersection. And in my mind, doing a delegation, could it hurt? I think the more advocacy we can do to have these kinds of improvements through MTO in our region would be ideal, because I feel like we continue to be pushed and pushed and pushed out to further dates. That's my feeling.
Thank you. There is something of truth in your comment about being pushed down the road. They've done it a few times now. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Lyndon, for your report. I believe you said your meeting with staff is March the 4th. I note for council's information and staff is that the close for delegation requests is March 8th at midnight, 11:59 p.m. So perhaps if I could suggest, if we don't hear hopefully good news in terms of both timing and extent of projects here, that perhaps we could have an open-ended time that perhaps we could use those next 3 days or so to put a delegation request if staff and others could be given that authority from council to do that. I think it's a benefit. I think a happenstance perhaps that March 8th is after the March 4th, that we still have that flexibility. So I see the wisdom perhaps of not moving forward. I understand Councillor Andreessen's comment, but I will say, how can I say this? Sometimes political interference on projects with the MTO was not particularly helpful. Staff at MTO don't necessarily take kindly to being told by politicians, and I don't just mean municipal politicians, that projects should move forward. That includes provincial politicians, even ministers. So there's merit in that, but if there is need for staff and other representatives from North Perth to make that delegation request, it doesn't, just because we make the request doesn't mean we'll get it. But hopefully we will hear good news on the 4th, and we can allay concerns perhaps expressed by both staff and council here regarding timing. But perhaps we can wait and hear what the outcome is of the meeting would be the appropriate response. Thank you.
Let me just sort of get a sense from my colleagues. To me, there seems to be some wisdom in that sort of a contingency approach, wherein we can put in a delegation request if the March 4th meeting turns to gumbo, which that minister has heard from my lips before. Colleagues, does that seem reasonable? Staff can use its discretion to move forward with a delegation request if we don't get anywhere in the meetings on March 4th. Okay, shall we direct staff to this effect then? Yeah, all right. So I think we'll do a little rapid resolution creation here that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs staff to use its discretion in submitting a delegation request to the Ministry of Transportation. Do we need to worry about infrastructure here? I don't think so, right? With regards to looming projects on Highway 23 at 87 and from Listowel to Newry on Highway 23. Got it. Look at the clerk. Nods her head. That's great. Can I call for a mover? Oh, Councillor Anstett, Councillor Duncan, thank you. Discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Councillor Duncan. Okay, we're ready for a vote. Let's have the vote then.
I'm in favor.
Okay, Councillor Anstett records a manual in favor vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Couch, thank you. You had lots of things tonight for us. All right, let's move then to the reports from the Environmental Services Department. As item 9.3.1, our Manager of Environmental Services, Mr. Mark Hackett, brings forward the annual drinking water reports for the water systems in the municipality. Mr. Hackett, brief us on this, remind us of our responsibilities, all those good things, please.
All right, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and Council. As you're aware, we're required by Ontario Reg 170. We have to do a summary report for each of our water systems. We also have to do an annual report. I bring those each year. This year is the first year I've actually put those two reports, combined them into one. one for each drinking water system, and they'll be posted on the website following approval from council. So I think I'll just jump in and go through each of the water reports, starting with, and again, they're in alphabetical order, follow along in your council agenda. So the Atwood drinking water system is the first report, would be page 143 of the agenda. And I'll just kind of go maybe a little bit more detail of this one, just because it's the first one that you're looking at. So the first part talks about the licensing information for the system. On the next page, it gives a description of the drinking water system, followed by, on the next page, the breakdown of monetary expenses. So there's a few things there. Atwood Well 2 which is the Smith Well, had an inspection and pump maintenance. And then we also had part of the water meter replacement and new AMI reading system there. And then the next part is would be reportable actions that took place. So in August, we tested the sodium. That's something that we test every 5 years. And it had a result of 0.24. The limit is 0.20. So, and that's normal for Atwood. Every 5 years we go through this process of the health unit gives us direction, then and we resample and retest, and then this year they actually gave us a document to be given out to all the homeowners in Atwood, explaining that it's for what the sodium exceedance means. We also had a low pressure event in September, where a contractor drilled through a water main, so it dropped the pressure in the system. So we were required to report that. We sampled and tested, and everything was fine. So then the next couple pages of the report have to do with all the different sampling, the microbiological sampling, the operational testing. I did add one part, and would be the same in all 4 systems, that this little blurb I'm going to talk about now, and it was additional water information. And this is related to the additional testing that we did this past year. So hardness and iron may affect the appearance of water. Iron is a natural occurring mineral, commonly found in groundwater wells throughout Ontario. When the iron is less than 0.3 milligrams per liter, you don't notice any of the staining that can occur from it, or any of the discoloration of the water. We do add sodium silicate that is meant to try to keep the iron in suspension. So with all the testing that we did 2 rounds of testing. The average iron level in the raw water, so it's before any treatment, was 0 in 2023 was 0.82, which is to be expected because we wouldn't see any iron if it was below the 0.30. And the average iron level in the distribution water in 2023 was 0.56, so the silicate does have some effect. I also should mention that the iron testing is not required by the Safe Drinking Water Act, and it's considered an aesthetic or visual concern, not a health concern. So I've put that information in all 4 of the reports because it was just sort of a grouping of all the testing that we did. Then following through, there's the inorganic testing, lead testing, and organic testing. These are all, there's nothing really to pick out of these. All of the testing was, there were no exceedances. Except for if you go to well, it's not an exceedance, but if you go to the last page, and this is for each system, you have to list any inorganic or organic compounds that exceed half the standard that's in the Ontario Drinking Water Quality Standards. So you'll see this in all of them that were done. Fluoride is tested every 5 years. So this year the result in Atwood was 1.12 milligrams per liter. The standard is 1.5. And I made a note here that fluoride is a naturally occurring in the Atwood drinking water supply, as in all of our wells. And here on Perth, Public Health Unit does have a little bit of information about that, so I included a link to that if anyone wanted to read more about fluoride in the water. Excuse me. So part 2 is a summary report. And so there were no non-compliances in 2023. And then the rest of this is really about the flows and the water that's produced at each of the wells. So we have well 1, Danbrook well, and well 2, the Smith well. I think the most important page then would be when you combine those wells together. And so it shows that on that last page of the report, we averaged 86.9 cubic meters per day of water usage in Atwood. And that was just under 15% of the capacity of the wells. and that the highest amount of water that, in cubic meters per day that we used was 180, and that's equivalent of 30.5% of the capacity of the water system in Atwood. So that's Atwood. I won't go quite as much detail in the other ones, but I will start. Gownstown was next. It follows the same format. There were no significant expenses in 2023. There were nothing really to point out with the microbiological or any of the other testing that was done. There were no non-compliances. You'll see if you were looking in closer detail, this was the year we had to do all of the testing, all the inorganic and organic testing, because it's done every 5 years for small systems and every 3 years for the larger systems like Atwood and Listowel. And again, if you go to the last page, it would be page 164, where we're required to list anything that was above half the prescribed amount. We do arsenic testing every quarter because it's above of half of that, it's 9.4 range, just below the limit of 10, and that's consistent with historical values for arsenic in the water in Gownstown. It hasn't changed in years. And then if we look at the summary report for Gownstown on the last page, they use 10.9 cubic meters on average per day, which is 15% of the capacity, and their largest day of use was 52.5% of the capacity. So that's Gownstown. If we look at Listowel, that's the right page. So on page 171, there was we had the water meter replacement and AMI system, and also we did the Listowel water tower interior and exterior cleaning last year. So those were significant expenses. There were a few reportable items. When well 4 had been out of service for some maintenance, it was out of service at the end of 2022 into the beginning of 2023. For a couple of months there, when we fired it back up, the testing that was done, we had a hit on arsenic. It was 11.4 micrograms per liter. We resampled as we were required to do by regulation, by direction from the health unit. The test result came back at 6.4, which is exactly where it normally is. I think it might have just been something with the startup. So there was no further action from that. We also had in May what they call an NDOG, which is no data overgrown non-target bacteria. And that's something that happens once in a while. So there was a bit of overgrowth on the plate when the lab went to do it. It's not E. coli or total coliforms, so that's what they refer to this. So you're simply required to resample and retest, which we did, and there was no result or no issues with the test when we retested. And there was also good chlorine residuals at the time of the testing, so there was no issue there. I've had it happen maybe once or twice in my time. So there's a whole lot of information there because there's 3 wells in Listowel. And I think if we go to page 182, where we have all of the things that were over half the standard. We have the fluoride at well 4, 5, and 6. It was done in 2023 as well. All of them were over half. We have the arsenic one I just talked about, which was 11.4, and the retest at 6.4. And then well 4 in Listowel is always above half. So you can see we're required to test it quarterly. And you can see the results are right in that range of 6.4. You can see the ones there. Looking at the summary report in part 2 for Listowel, and I spoke to this during my report about the ministry inspector reports. It had to do with how we were calibrating and when we were calibrating the chlorine analyzers. And so we've updated our standard operating procedure, and there's no further action that was required from that. If we look at the system capabilities, again, I won't go through each individual well, but if you go to the last page, it shows that in Listowel, our average is 2,390 cubic meters per day, which is 24% of the capacity. The highest flow day was 64% of the capacity. Those are typically on a day when we're flushing. We're using a lot of water on a day like that. So that's Listowel, and the last one is Molesworth. On page 192, we did have one reportable event that was a total coliform result of 1. We resampled and retested as were required by legislation. And they came back with no TC. And again, they have the same issue that we have everywhere else pretty well, is with fluoride, and they had a value of 1.10, and it'll be tested again in 2025. Looking at the summary report, there were no non-compliances in 2023. Molesworth uses approximately 16.6 cubic meters per day, which is only less than 9% of the capacity, and their highest day was 39% of the capacity of the system. So that, I know there's a lot of information there, but I'd like to try to explain what I can. I'd be happy to take any questions about those drinking water reports.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hackett. Colleagues, any questions or first comments on this? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So, resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives for information the 2023 annual drinking water reports. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Anstedt records a manual vote.
Favor as well.
Councillor Nordum gives us a manual vote in favor. And with that, we have 10 votes accounted for. That is carried. All right, let's have Mr. Hackett for round two here. This time we're talking about the annual report for the Listowel Wastewater Treatment Facility.
Yeah, so this is similar. We bring this report each year. It's required by March 31st to be submitted to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. So just going through the report, I'll just sort of jump right into it. The first part is the monitoring data and analytical results. So it looks at the flows that come in, the flows that go out. It looks at the influent quality. So for certain parameters like CBOD, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and total colloidal nitrogen. So we see what's coming in. And then if you go a couple pages, the next page shows what the effluent is like going out, what we're able to achieve. And then on the next page, it talks about those same parameters. And I like this one because it shows how much was removed. It has the concentration removal as a percentage and the loading removal. So it shows, that's a significant amount of removal of those parameters. There are no operational upsets. The maintenance activities are as listed. I won't go through all of those. I will mention what I like to mention each year when we do this report, when we talk about meeting design objectives. Our ECA sets limits, and those are what we have to meet, and we've met those with no issues. Then they have objectives that we're to strive to meet, and those are the results for each of those parameters that we were able to meet that objective. It's not always the easiest thing to do because it's very stringent numbers. The next part is the sludge that's generated, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next report. But that is, it shows how much sludge was produced and how much went onto the fields, and then it has a list of all the different locations or fields or how much or the volumes that went onto those fields. Of note, the next part is the bypass spills and abnormal discharge events. So we actually did have what we called a planned secondary clarifier effluent partial bypass of the filter system. Our lagoon was very full in January. It was very wet. We had a lot of melting snow, and we're having some issues and doing some maintenance on our filters at the time, and we couldn't push out as much water as we wanted to. We talked to the ministry and health unit, and we were given permission to do this partial bypass of the filter system. We tested it every single day as we were required to. So that went from January 9th to January 30th. We were able to get better control and be able to get the filters back online. That's sort of leading to work coming up. That's the next thing that we need to do at our plant is the final effluent filters. And then the next part is the imported wastewater summary. So that's just the amounts of what we take into the septic receiving station. We don't have as many haulers. I don't know if people who have seen these every year. We used to have a long list, but we're down to mainly septage, and then there's a few other products that come in. So it has the volumes and then the loading that is produced from those haulers. And that's basically the report on the wastewater side. So I'd be happy to take any questions if there were any.
Thank you. Capacity, you want to just give us a capacity review if that's a relevant question here?
Yep, that's something we're always working on, and we have continued to work with our engineer towards being able to get the hydraulic re-rating of our hydraulic capacity re-rated. We haven't had a lot of luck with it as of yet, and I think we have a plan moving forward that may involve more capital work once we're done. So the next step, though, along the sort of the bottleneck right now that we're facing is those filters. So the design work's being completed as a capital project this year. Next year they'll be installed, and then we will be in a better position to apply. We haven't actually applied yet to have the hydraulic re-rating or capacity re-rated, because the message we were getting from the ministry at the time when we had a discussion with them is that we needed to kind of fix that problem, and then we'll be able to move forward from there. Also, looking down the road with the growth that we're seeing, we have to look longer term than just the next couple of years as well, and that will involve the next couple of stages would probably be adding a third train, which would mean another aeration cell, blowers, possibly another clarifier, possibly another digester. So it's all part of the cost of the growth that we're seeing, and that's something that we'll be addressing and have plans for in the future.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or first comments? Oh, CAO Snow.
So just because it's quite often in the news, can you just explain that a secondary bypass is not untreated wastewater going into the bypass, similar to what we hear other municipalities when they do a bypass, that's when they just bypass untreated wastewater into the environment. A planned secondary bypass is that's not it at all. And can you explain the difference just so everybody's clear?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the partial bypass that we did was simply we couldn't put enough water through the filters to be able to make room in the lagoon because we had such high flows coming in and such high water in the lagoons. So the only portion of that was bypassed was part of the filters. So I'll give you an example. If we were putting 10 megaliters of water through the filters, we could put that through, and we were trying to push 12 through. 2 megaliters of that were not going through the filters. They were being completely treated, and they were going through the UV, every other part of the treatment except through the filters. We still weren't out of compliance on it.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. It was a what they call a partial bypass. It's not like Chris said, raw sewage going into the river by any means. It was basically the same water that's going out all the time. But just we couldn't get that much through the filters at the time.
I noticed Councillor Richardson actually giving us sort of gestures to help us understand. So that was great. Yeah, thanks. Okay, any other questions or first comments? All right, I have the resolution then for this one, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a 2023 annual wastewater report for information. Moved by Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, Councillor Nordum records Emmanuel, and Councillor Anstedt votes in favor. With those two, we have a full complement, and that is carried. Thank you. I'm starting to think, based on Councillor Richardson's gestures there, maybe we need to have some of these technical things explained with puppets or something. I don't know. Explaining technical reports with puppets. I think we should challenge the staff to consider this in the future. Yeah, I look forward to Mr. Romani's budget explanations with puppets. I think that should prove very interesting. All right. CEO still looks nervous now. You may speak.
I'm not going to suggest puppets, but I think one of the things that we should do in the future, and we should probably plan a day, is one of the things that council has not seen is the money that we did spend at the wastewater treatment plant because of COVID, because it was done during COVID and opened up during COVID. But having been out there a couple times myself, the new improvements to the plant are quite remarkable, and I think we should take a tour out there sometime when the weather warms up.
No puppets.
All right, I'm being told no puppets. I'm feeling disappointed. Let's move to item 9.3.3. On this one, council is invited to award a contract for the provision of removal and disposal services of biosolids at the North Perth treatment plant following a procurement conducted in accordance with our bylaw on that subject and usual practices that stem from that. This procurement proposes award of a contract to Ontario Greenway of Mitchell, Ontario. Mr. Hackett, brief comments on this one.
Sure. Yeah, we had 5 bidders on this project, and we had 3 different municipal staff members review the bids and the proposals based on the company profile and proof of ability, their work plan deliverables, equipment and infrastructure availability, and finally the proposal pricing. And so the highest score that was received by all 3 was for Ontario Greenways. Ontario Greenways is a company that's currently handling our sludge. And these costs are accounted for in our annual operational budget.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hackett. Questions or first comments on this one? Councillor Duncan.
So this contract here will haul away the sludge that's being produced currently. So I remember in the past we discussed that we had an excess in some of the lagoon cells that needed to be removed. Have we ever moved ahead with cleaning some of that out, or we've just typically hauled away what we produce every year now?
Yeah, we've concentrated on what we produce each year. We do have the potential to look at removing at some point. We'll have to remove sludge from especially the overflow, what we call the overflow lagoon, which would be the East Lagoon. At some point, we would need to look at that, but that's not included as part of this. We've taken small amounts out typically we're struggling just with when the fields are ready and they've got to go when they come. So we usually are just getting the sludge out that's created each year. But at some point, it could be a separate thing. But we'd have to look at removing sludge from that lagoon.
Okay.
Just as a follow-up question, how complex is an operation like that?
I think it involves dewatering the lagoon first, getting down to the sludge that's at the bottom, and then it would be, I've never actually seen it done, but it would involve probably pushing the sludge up towards one end where they can remove. There's a number of different ways they do it, where they pump it into bags that they fill, large long bags, and they let it dry in there. There's a couple different ways you can do it. I forget the term for what that's called. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
So we could bring back a plan. So the interesting part, so the East Lagoon is the only lagoon with any sludge in it. And it's really been there since the plant was redone in the 80s. Obviously, all the sludge used to go in there at one time. I mean, it is naturally being looked after by what the old Sutton process would have done. But there's some point we should probably look at cleaning it up. But it's certainly not hurting anything. It's not going anywhere. But it does eventually, someday will have to be cleaned up.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else with questions? Councillor Johnston.
Not a question, just a comment that the Ontario Greenways doesn't just show up, grab the sludge and put it wherever they want. Every field is tested, licensed, and they keep all the NASMs and everything, and so it's all approvals on how much they can haul onto what agricultural fields and at what time of the year.
That's right. They do soil testing and all that type of work prior to it, develop a sludge management plan, and then follow it. Yeah.
Seems like a reasonable service. Indeed. Okay. Anyone else with questions or comments? All right, I have a resolution then as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards request for proposal NP-005-24P, biosolid removal and disposal from North Perth wastewater treatment plant to vendor Ontario Greenway Inc., Mitchell, Ontario, for an amount of up to 2.280 million, excluding taxes, for an initial 5-year term. So that's the total cost over 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Thank you. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Johnston, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'll be in favor as well.
Councillor Nordum records a manual in favor vote, and with that, that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Hackett. All right, that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. I think what I'll do is I'll press through until we get to the closed session opportunity, and then we can take a health break at that point. And so just so councillors know the game plan here. For item 10, councillors, are there any reports that you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? Councillor Blazek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. This isn't a new report request, more of a request on the status of a follow-up, if I could. The ward boundary review, do we know when we plan on meeting for that again?
I believe the clerk has been doing some work on this, so I'll turn to the clerk for an answer.
Yes, so ward boundary, council composition, final report is coming back to council on April 8th, which is a regular council meeting. And we will limit the agenda that night to allow for discussion.
Okay, any other questions about reports? Councillor Rothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. Just for those of us that attended the Perth County official plan open house 2 weeks ago, there was a significant crowd in attendance, and there's a number of issues that came to mind, and I'm going to suggest it may be appropriate for council to request the Perth County Planning Department to provide a report and presentation to this council on the additional lands proposed to be redesignated from agriculture to residential, industrial, commercial on lands specifically adjacent to Listowel and Atwood. There was one property owner in particular brought forward his concerns that he had no idea that his lands were going to be redesignated from agriculture. This is on the south side of Line 84, sort of east of Wallace Avenue South. And I think other councillors that I've talked to were surprised as well. Even though Perth County staff did provide this council with a overall or overview of the new official plan, we did not roll up our sleeves and go into any details. And I think that it would be appropriate for this council to be at least aware of the proposed changes, so that when our phone does ring, that we'll know the areas. And in particular, I think it comes into the question as to why these lands were chosen, perhaps other like the rationale. I think that's important for this council to look at. And the second issue, and this is probably the biggest one, is that to request Perth County Council or Perth County Planning Department to have a report and presentation to this council on the policy differences between the current natural resource environment designation policies and the proposed natural environment policies, as well as the current and proposed mapping. And this was a clear indication of concern that was expressed at the open house, not just here in North Perth, but elsewhere. And I think that I'm not looking at additional work to be done. I'm just believing in discussion with Councillor Matt Duncan here, that I believe the county staff are working on some mapping and this specific issue to address the issue of concern about some 10,000 plus acres being added into a natural environment designation, which raised a few eyebrows. But frankly, I think it's important that we understand why that, and that's throughout the entire county, but that we need to understand within our community what those changes are, because clearly there's misinformation that's being spread by a group which has put people on edge. And I think that anything that the planning department can do to educate this council and certainly the public would be helpful. So again, I'm not looking for additional work to be done. I'm just looking for additional information to be shared as we come forward out of the open house session through into consideration for the possible May consideration by county council for a public meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I'll offer a comment or two if you don't mind. I think some of what you have suggested seems appropriate, but I will remind that it's at least my opinion, and I want it on record, that right now we're kind of outside the political process. We're in the sort of technical planning staff level kind of processes around the consultations, right? So for politicians at this point to get too far involved is probably not prudent. I know that it's coming to us in due course, and I think we need to let the experts who are trying to manage a consultation process do their part. I will say to my colleagues that I'm personally very much in favor of telling those who call who are in a state of concern about the official plan draft and who are in some cases presenting misinformation, that they need to engage with county planning staff. That's the process. And for us to be trying to handle these, we're not the technical experts, and yet in many cases we're being asked very technical questions. So I want to be careful that we don't sort of overemphasize to the political level at this point where we are in the process, because we're still in that public consultation process that's been delegated to staff and consultants. That's my take anyway. Some merit certainly on how lands in North Perth were selected. I think that it would be of interest to this council. But in the broader context of the kinds of questions we're getting, let's send them on to Perth County. Let's make sure that they know that Perth County has the answers for them. And those folks are trained and they know how to answer the vast majority of those questions that some of us are receiving. And I know that we are hearing from constituents, but the grief that we're taking is largely unnecessary because the staff is there to answer those questions and to deal with them. So given that, does that change anything about the way you think about this, Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks for your comments. I've put my recommendation through to staff in terms of the importance of education to address the misinformation that's out there regarding the natural resource environment designation / natural environment. And I think as soon as people understand, A, what the policies are, and B, what the mapping is in terms of what they have now and what's being proposed, much of this information or discontent will be addressed. And unfortunately, irrespective of the fact that the words were spoken is that agriculture will continue to be permitted, that's not enough to address the concerns that were expressed, especially when you're saying there's additional some 10,000 acres, 10,250 or whatever, over the entire county. So I'm fine if we leave that point to staff to make sure, and there's an undertaking to make sure that that's happening, because we have the tools and ability to do this. And unfortunately, we didn't utilize that tool already but we can still encourage that tool to be had so that Joe and Jane public can actually literally log on to the website and say, here's my land, here's my woodlot, for example, that they'll see, here's the designation now, here's the designation proposed, what does that mean? And there will be nothing to explain as soon if in fact they match up. They'll say, well, I've got no problem now, I'll have no problem in the future. If someone can verify for me that that's the case, great. Unfortunately, that wasn't there yet. The first part, I think, was perhaps the biggest issue I think, from this council's perspective, so that we understand from the mapping perspective what is being proposed. And I think there's lands that were selected which were perhaps surprising for some of us in terms of what's being proposed. So that's, if I can suggest, maybe the first part of my recommendation or request for council consideration from a report from the Perth County Plan Department, that would be the one, so that we actually understand where the proposed expansions are. And then secondly, I believe that this council did this council did mention the issue in terms of increasing our densities. I think Councillor Duncan raised that issue. But it was also addressed in some of the open houses that we need to look at our maps in terms of our expansion to address the issues so that we are not continuing to consume additional prime agricultural land, but that we're building up. And I would, hopefully council understands the rationale for this. And again, it's not for any new reports to be done, but certainly this council, I think, needs to understand why certain lands are proposed as opposed to others for growth. Thank you.
So I share the sentiments, and certainly around the tools, although I will say that sometimes the use of GIS software is a complexity that a lot of people don't have comfort with. That's been my own experience at times. But I will suggest gently that it will create work for county staff to prepare and show those maps of the changes in North Perth. And I don't know what the scope of that work is. Not that we can't ask, but I'm pointing out that for them to build a presentation and come to us with that, it will take some staff time to do it. So I see some other hands, I think, over on this side. Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I think, I'm thinking back to that presentation that we had on the proposed official plan. It was a very overview type of summarized version, which is appreciated. And I'm wondering if Mr. or Council Rothwell is speaking more of an education perspective for us as councillors to know more about the nitty gritty proposed changes, the differences between the previous plan to this plan, so that we're better educated as well. Is that part of your request too? It's almost an education session.
Through you, Councillor, yes, I believe so. And again, even the presentation at the open house focused on the new official plan, as it should. There was no real comparison between this current policy and proposed policy. And I think if you, in my view, if you want to have people understand those differences, that you actually need to take that time. Yeah. Now, my understanding is that county staff are supposed to be actually having the recorded version of the presentation that the planner made at the open houses is supposed to be up on the website. Currently, the link is to each municipal council's presentation that was made by the planning department, which, as Councillor Andreessen said, is just an overview. As opposed to getting into some of the details. The presentation that was made at the open house, which I want to again commend all those in attendance at North Perth. You could have heard a pin drop because we were having some technical issues. After the presentation was over, perhaps things got a little more heated, but at least staff, or pardon me, those that were in attendance had the courtesy at least so that we could hear what we could of the presentation online. So for those that missed it, I think it's important to at least hear those words from the consultant, but then to get to the real understanding so that we as councillors and certainly members of the public in the longer term, have a full understanding about what's changing here. I just don't want to hear what the new policies are. I want to know what the difference truly is between here and there. So at some point, I think this council and every local municipal council needs to hear that. And again, my understanding is that we should be getting into some of those details at some point, so that this council understands. Because I mean, it will be the official plan that we're all abiding by. And we are going to be making land use planning decisions based on that. So if we don't understand it, then we've got a problem. So that's my point. So thanks.
And like I said, I think where we're at now, and I, if my colleagues dissent from my view of this at county council table, please let me know. But we're sort of in this staff, technical, public consultation. And for us to dabble in that at this point is probably only as citizens. Like, to me, if you want to participate, then by all means participate as a citizen in the process, because that's the orientation and the effort that the staff are making at this point. I agree that this council and all councils at the lower tiers will need to have a more in-depth presentation at some point in due course, because we'll be asked to make various decisions about things. But we're not there yet. I think we're still at the sort of broad public consultation phase, and it's very much in our interest to divert as much of the calls, the letters, the emails, the whatever that are coming our way to the county planning staff. They want that information. They want to have those conversations. The number of times that evening, as those who were in attendance saw, they said, please call us. Here's our email. Please email us. Please give us your input. And we will help you understand your property. They repeat themselves quite often on that front. Mm-hmm. So, CAO Snell, did you want to weigh in on this at this point at all? No. Okay, that was an easy no. To me, I think we are going to get that education in due course. It's just, let's get past this public, broad consultation and let them chew on the things that they learned and what should be changed, right? Because there'll be some things that have to be changed. Even in county council session when it was presented to us, we were concerned about densities of housing and so forth in the plan. So there are things that have to be adjusted. CEO stuff. Now you want in.
I could certainly talk to the manager of planning to maybe get a clear expectation of when she expects to come to the lower tiers and report that back to the next council, or send it to council through an email, just to sort of a clear outline from the county planning staff of what that timeline looks like.
I think that's helpful. And your suggestions are well noted. I think we can convey the suggestions that you've made around the availability of mapping, for example. I know that was a tension in the department, just from talking to Ms. Hackler, that they were trying to decide whether to make that mapping available or whether the mapping was actually going to confuse and frustrate people more. And so this was part of the considerations. I think that still is to be resolved, but your points are well made. Councillor Duncan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I think after these open houses, I think this might be a little longer process than what we originally thought with the amount of feedback that came from these open houses. So I think, like CEO Snell said, I think you should communicate with the manager of planning and just find out, where she roughly thinks we're at. And I think this council needs another presentation prior to the next public meeting, so that everybody here understands what exactly is being proposed.
At some point in this process, obviously, those who are elected officials will be invoked to make some decisions, right? I don't think we're there yet. And I think that's part of the frustration, is that, we're getting a lot of people who are reaching out to us, and none of us individually are experts. Even I, who sat through 5 years of those discussions, can't tell you off the top of my head certain numbers that the public wants. So it's best to refer that stuff to the planning team. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Kiesenberg, and again, not to go on, but I will say that when all local municipal councils met and had a presentation on the new county official plan in Moncton, we were all there, I think it was 2019, There was a discussion specifically at that point about the mapping that was available then in terms of comparing between what's currently available and what's proposed. So I have a very full understanding of the county's GIS system. I frankly was there when we started building it, and I was there for all the upgrades that we've done along the way. It is a powerful, powerful system. And I know that every individual will not have the same capabilities in terms of being able to get the information themselves. But I know that staff will be available to get them the information that they need to have. And that's exactly the reason why we have our county GIS staff and planning department there. So if we want to quell the concerns that are there, we have to put that tool out there as soon as possible. I've made that point to planning staff, in my opinion, or otherwise we're going to see a significant drag. And then, for example, the Landowners Association, which is proposing class action lawsuits and so on, are going to get everyone riled up like no one's business, and that's not going to help anyone. So anyways, whatever we can do to resolve that issue as soon as possible would be very helpful. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, and I concur. I want to share that I concur. I agree with your premise that we should make all the mapping and the ability to see differences in layers available. That's not a choice that they've made yet, but it's, I'm sure, under consideration because they've heard it. Yes.
Thank you.
This is a file that has some significant misinformation being conveyed about what intent is even of this effort, and it's concerning. How do we refute that misinformation? This information seems to spread at least twice as fast as real facts. So it's quite an interesting challenge that we face as we move ahead. Did you still want to propose a firm resolution about something, or do you want to?
I'll withdraw the request based on the comments that in our discussion. CAO Snell, if he's prepared to have those conversations with the manager of planning. I can be patient. I'm sure every one of us can be patient, but just knowing that we will get this information sooner rather than later. And I need to underscore this, again, having a profession in planning my whole career, this plan is going to affect every single property within the county of Perth, every single one. You want to make sure it's right, and you want to make sure that we are able to address everyone's issues and concerns, not just the vocal ones. And I think whatever time is necessary to do so, then great. But, and again, it's getting long in the tooth and everyone's patience is wearing thin. Nevertheless, when you see the finish line in the not too far distant future, you want to get there. But one step at a time, I think we will. So with encouragement and support, I can certainly withdraw this piece as long as CAO Snell commits to having that conversation with the manager of planning and they come forthwith to have that fulsome discussion. And it will probably be a one-item agenda on a night that will take some time, I'm sure. Thank you.
Definitely, thank you. Thoughtful comments. Just, I'm sure that CAO Snell will follow up, and I'll make sure that he does on this one. So, indeed. All right. Any other requests for reports from staff or committees? All right, let's turn to item 11 then. We have received 3 items of correspondence that warrant our review and our action, all related to Paddy Fest. Hooray. So let's go through these one by one. For item 11.1, we've received a request for an exemption to provisions of the municipality's so-called noise bylaw for dates March 15th and 16th. And this, of course, is related to the festivities of the annual Paddy Fest celebration. I have a resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves an exemption to any timing regulations found in the noise bylaw for activities generated by Paddy Fest beginning on Friday, March 15th, 2024, and ending on Saturday, March 16th, 2024 at 10:30 p.m. And that council directs staff to advise relevant parties of this exemption in order to avoid unintended enforcement. Moved by Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nordham. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
Thanks. Councillor Anstead is in favor, recording a manual vote. And with that, that is carried. Next up is the street lineup for closures. As follows, the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the road closure request from the Kinsman Club of Listowel for the 2024 Patty Fest Parade to be held on Saturday, March 16th, 2024 at 11 a.m. for the following route. Beginning on Derry Street East to Elm Street North, south on Elm Street North to Main Street, west on Main Street to Wallace Avenue, north on Wallace Avenue to Elizabeth Street East, east on Elizabeth Street East, and ending on or at the Royal Canadian Legion parking lot. And that North Perth Public Works, Fire, OPP, and Perth County EMS be advised of the event. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum, seconded by Councillor Blazek. Let's have questions, by all means.
I'm just curious if something occurred in the past before I sat in this chair that changed parade routes from what they used to be, because every parade route seems to shut down Elm Avenue North for a period of time now, which is great, except there's only one in and out on Elm Avenue North. So is there a reason that this is the new way to go, and maybe we don't know the reason? I'm just curious.
It's a fine question. We'll ask CAO Snell if he wishes to comment on this one.
So we met with the OPP, Emergency Services, and the groups in our community that were having parades. And so the one thing we were struggling with is every parade route was different. And so we wanted to settle on one parade route that all the organizations would use. And this was the parade route that was best picked for a whole bunch of reasons, as far as accessibility to providing traffic around to most of town. And the problem is it does provide, recognize, having lived in that neighborhood, it does cause some issues. We can maybe do a better possibility of directing people through the park during that, but that. Oh, yeah, okay. We can look at that. We'll look at that.
It's an interesting idea, and certainly I've heard from constituents who complained about their roads being closed and access levels. So it's a good question.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, every parade route we pick, people don't like.
Be.
Yeah, people don't like their roads closed. But I do get it's the only access in and out of that part of the neighborhood.
Right.
My issue is not that we need to close roads for parade routes. I love a good parade. My issue is that we're closing roads that have only one in and out. And there's a lot of seniors in that neighborhood, and that's not necessarily the best thing for us to be doing.
Okay, thank you. CAO Snell, you'll follow up with some kind of action in the near future on this. Councillor Andreessen.
I would just like to provide my comments as well. I've worked on parade routes for 25 years through the Listowel Agricultural Society, and we actually experienced this route last year. We cannot have any agricultural equipment on Elizabeth Street because of the wires. And the agricultural community loves to participate in community events. We cannot run combines or large tractors or big transport trucks in the parade because of Elizabeth Street. And I'm speaking about, our own Listowel Fair Parade, but agricultural equipment participates in all parades. And it's very disappointing that they can't participate. And also, as an organizer who actually runs parades, having this route has been absolutely dangerous because we have no sight lines around that park for children, for parents dropping off, for parking. I have never been so stressed out by a parade route like this than this one. The other concern is access to EMS services to that neighborhood. You can't get back there. If anything happens at that retirement home back there, I don't know, how would you get back there? So I have great concerns from not just, the neighborhood, but all kinds of things from participation by community vehicles, agricultural vehicles, even just organization. I'm frustrated by it.
I think we've heard it. I think we should stick to the resolution to some degree on this occasion, but I think that obviously there's some need to do some further investigating and considering route options, given some of the key factors that have been mentioned here tonight. Does anyone object to considering the question? All right, it's duly moved and seconded. So let's have the vote on this one. Oh, we lost the display. There we go. All right, and that is carried. Thank you. And last one pertains to exemption for sign permit. The resolution as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves a one-time exemption to waive the $120 sign permit fee for the placement of a sign by the Kinsman Club of Listowel on the property of Johnston's Milk Transport, advertising Paddy Fest. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. Discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're missing one. There we go, and that is carried. Thank you. All right, let's turn to consideration of bylaws. Councillor Johnston.
I need to declare a conflict on bylaw 123-23, the South Maitland River Drain. I'm a landowner on that drain.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Johnston duly recorded. Fill out the form afterwards. All right, we have a bylaw here. It's bylaw time. There are three of them tonight. The enabling resolution outlines for each bylaw their number and purpose. Before I read the resolution for passing these bylaws, does any councillor wish to extract one of them or more of them for a more fulsome consideration or an individual vote? Everyone okay to consider this in aggregate? Councillor Rothwell?
Item 12.2. We're just giving that one first and second reading. Correct?
It is structured that way.
Yeah, so if we're considering these all together as one, like...
There's a resolution wording that does that.
All right.
That allows for each type.
And then further, I note in the proposed bylaw, there's a place order, I'll call it, in terms of the number sign that's in there. Hashtags are throughout the bylaw. I presume if it's adopted, both the mayor and the clerk will actually have the bylaw with the exact numbers. Is that correct? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a usual course that we'll have a draft bylaw with hashtags in them. So
placeholders, yeah.
Usually for our consideration, we've got those numbers. So hopefully before you sign them, we'll have them. Correct?
I assure you that will be the case.
Thank you very much.
I assure you of that. All right. Let's bring the resolution then onto the table and we can figure out where to go here. As follows. The following bylaw be read a first and second time and be provisionally adopted. Number 6-2024 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended. And that the following bylaw be read a third and final time and be finally passed. 123-2023 being a bylaw to provide for drainage works, South Maitland River Drain German Crossing. And that the following bylaw is hereby passed. 7-2024 being a bylaw to amend the Municipality of North Perth Listowel Ward Official Plan, Amendment number 33. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Nordham. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on these? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're missing one. There it is. Thank you. And that is carried. We can invite Councillor Johnston to return to the room. All right, we're at item 13 on our agenda. As item 13.1, do any councillors wish leave to give notice of motion? I'm not seeing any, so that turns us to item 14 on our agenda. For item 14, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Colleagues, any announcements? I can say that we had a wonderful coldest night of the year event on the weekend, and our number continues to grow in terms of how much money was raised in our community. So thanks to all those who participated in that as volunteers, as donors, as walkers. It went extremely well. That brings us to item number 15. We have 3 items to be considered in a closed session of council. I'll read the resolution that explains and enables our action at this point in time. As follows, that the council proceeds in camera at 9:19 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to the following: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees regarding water sewer invoice, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding Plan 44M10, Part Block 39, RP 44R 3986, PT Part 1, Nelson Avenue South, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, Plan 162, RP 44R 3947, Part 2. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Anstead, seconded by Councillor Nordham. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. All those who are invited to remain with council for the closed session should stay. Those who've been asked or who have not been asked to stay should probably exit the council chambers at this point. We will reconfigure our audiovisual equipment and get underway with our session shortly. Let me deal with the AV first. we go. Let's turn that one off. All right, I can confirm that Council did discuss the matters identified in our enabling resolution for a closed session meeting of Council. Staff was given direction on the matters, and at this hour, we will not reveal that direction. That direction will remain confidential for the reasons that were stipulated in our agreement. Okay. Council has amended a good practice act near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I do have a draft of that. Please take note that Councillors Johnston and Andreessen have left the chamber. And our confirmatory resolution is as follows: that bylaw 15-2024, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the municipality of North Perth, is hereby passed. Moved by Councillor Nordham, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Anstead records a manual in favor vote. We're looking for 8 votes. And we have those 8 votes. That is now carried. Thank you, Councillor Anstead, if you would do your usual. Good luck. Do you change into a Superman outfit when that happens? Just out of curiosity? All right, colleagues, we have completed the deliberation and taken action on the business that was put before us, which means it is appropriate to consider a resolution to adjourn. As follows: the council meeting adjourns at 10:29 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, March 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Blazek. It's not debatable. Let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Anstead records a manual in favor vote. And I'm waiting on one. Who are we missing? Councillor Duncan. Councillor Duncan, your vote didn't take. He votes yes. And with Councillor Duncan's vote yes, that is carried. Colleagues, we are adjourned until Monday, March 4th, 2024.